All right, so let's go into for this project. I want you guys to go into your GitHub account, and we're going to want to create a new repository, because what we're going to start doing is we're going to start creating our initial project in GitHub, clone it so we have a copy on our local computer, and then we have a means to be able to push and pull so that it always stays in sync, and we could work on it at home, work on it directly through GitHub, or work on it at school. This will allow you to be able to, if you're running behind, to make sure that you're getting your stuff done, and if you're wanting to work ahead, you also have that opportunity too. So in order to do that, once you have your account open, you're going to go to New Repository. And in this one, we're going to, and this is for any project, but for this one, we're going to call it Constructor Overloading. Now, since I already have done this, I'm going to call it Constructor Overloading with an underscore. Okay. And repo for your programming 3 to learn about constructor overloading. Okay, we're going to be working on this for a while though, so let's go ahead and click on create repository. Now we have it. We didn't need the README, but if we did, all you got to do is just click on the clone repository, and you want to get this URL link. So that's the one I want. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the copy to clipboard. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and open up Get Kraken. If you don't have it open up Get Kraken, and you have an option to do file and to clone the repo, or you're going to click on the folder. Either one will get you to an option where you can clone the repo. So if I go clone repo, then I am setting where I am cloning to. Now I have it in documents. You are doing it in your Z drive under your advanced programming folder. So it should not be in documents. It needs to be in your Z drive. Go ahead and click browse, and you're going to locate that. So you're going to locate your advanced programming projects, and you're not clicking into it. It is not going to be like this, okay? You are going to just have it selected, and you're going to click select folder. Okay, so all I have is it selected. I'm clicking select folder. Now I'm going to paste that link that I had, and now it's going to say a full path, but it's going to have this constructor overloading. All that means is that it's creating that folder for us in our project folder. So let's go ahead and clone it. It's going to say that it was successful, and then asks us if we want to open it now. The next thing that we're going to see is it's going to say that we have to do an initial commit. We're going to do that, so we're going to initialize, and then it's going to open up and Get Kraken. Now it automatically created a README file, but other than that, this is a completely blank file folder. But what I do see is on my local, I have a branch that's called master, and on my remote, this is my GitHub. So you should recognize it because it has your face that you have attached to it, or the design that you have attached to it, and it's going to say origin. Master and origin are pretty common. So now we have everything linked up. We can go ahead and we could look at what we got now in our folder. So I did the one with the underscore. So this is all it has. Now it has a readme.md file that just got copied from GitHub, and then there's this .get. This .get is what allows us to have a carbon copy to make sure that we have a carbon copy everywhere on our stuff. So you do not want to mess with that. You want to just leave it go. If you deleted it, it would no longer track your project. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to go into IntelliJ, and we're going to go to File, and we want to create a new project, but we want to make sure that we're creating inside that folder. Okay, so File, New Project. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and hit Next. We're going to leave this Create Project from Template. We're going to leave that blank. We're going to click Next. Now our project name, we're calling it Constructor Overloading. Okay, and then in our project location, we need to locate that folder. Now, I am using Documents because I'm on a personal computer. You guys are using your Z drive, so you're scrolling all the way down, finding your Z drive, finding your project folder, and then you're finding the Constructor Overloading folder. So it would look like this. There it is. I select it. I click OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and click Finish, and it's going to set up, ask me if I wanted this window. I do. Now you will at some point have it pop up where it's asking about Git and tracking your projects because it recognizes a Git file. You don't need to do that in IntelliJ, but IntelliJ is set up for source control. I'm having you guys use Git Kraken, so you could just ignore whenever that pops up. Okay, so now I'm looking at my project structure. I have nothing in my source folder, but what we can do, just so that we can practice, we can go to our Git Kraken account, or Git Kraken, and now when I'm looking, I see this master and I see my computer. That's my local, and it's in line with the initial commit. When I look above it, I see this empty circle and it says WIP. That stands for Work in Progress. And what it's telling me is that I have changes that are more advanced or farther along than where my local is currently saving my history. So here you'll have a bunch of different icons that are going to kind of tell you what it is. So here I have this green plus. That means that there's 5 new files that I didn't previously have. That's not so this is behind on what needs to be loaded. I could also have a red, and it will have a minus, meaning that I deleted a file, an orange, which would mean that I changed a file, and then a blue, which would mean that I have changed the file name. So if I click on this work in progress, now it's showing that I have 5 on-stage files. If I scroll down, I can see definitely that there's 5. I could stage those changes individually or all at once. I'm looking at those changes, and I want to put a meaningful commit to this. So I'm going to say created IntelliJ project. Okay, now if I commit using Git Kraken, commit only actually pushes it to the branch when you are on GitHub. Okay, so if I commit, it's basically like I'm saying, it's kind of like a save your work, but it's basically I'm saying that those are the changes that I want, and I have made my mind up about it. Okay, so if I commit, now it's saying that my local is here, but I don't see anything about my remote. That's because my remote is not synced at this point. Okay, now I can go ahead and click undo, and I can undo that commit. And now my files are back to being staged. And this is useful, so before I do a push, I can make sure that I have the right files. So if I accidentally attach the wrong files, or I attach too few or too many, I can undo a commit, and I can look at them, double check, either unstage those files that I find, whatnot, add more, and then I would write my commit message again. Okay, so let's go ahead and commit those changes. Now if we wanted to actually sync up to the GitHub, so if I look at GitHub, just so you can see that it doesn't have it. If I refresh, I'm still looking at this. Nothing has changed. But if I, with the stuff that I've already committed, if I push it up to the server, up to GitHub, then I will have a carbon copy up to that point. Okay, so when you want to pull something from GitHub or a remote server, you are pulling down, you are pushing up, okay, to the cloud. So I'm pushing this up, and it's going to ask me what remote and branch should master push to and pull from. So master is pushing to origin, that's this remote, from this master branch right here. Okay, so I go ahead and click submit. Now, if I go to GitHub and I refresh, I now see a new file structure. Okay, it still doesn't really have anything in there because I haven't started typing stuff, but now it is synced with it. I could start creating files here. So you could do this on your phone, you could do this at home, you could do this directly in GitHub, you could create new files and start playing around with it. Okay. In our project though, we could go back to IntelliJ and let's go ahead and select, and then we can go to File New, or we can right click and create a class, and we're going to call this one Constructor Overloading. Click OK. Alright, so now I have a class. In there, I want to actually have two classes. The other one is going to be called time of day. And let's go ahead and click OK. Alright, so now I have two classes. I don't have a main method. I need to put it in. I'm going to go ahead and put it in Constructor Overloading. I'm going to hit Alt-1. I'm in presentation view. So now I have my Constructor Overloading. I want to add in here the main method. So public static void main string brackets arg. Okay, so now I have my main method, and let's go ahead and edit our time of day. So actually, let's do, just so you guys can see, we can go into our Git Kraken and we can commit multiple times before we do a push. So now I see that there are two files that are created and one that has been changed. Let's go ahead and look at it. So it changed this .xml space, and now it's showing that in that source folder there's a Constructor Overloading Java file and time of day Java file. I'm going to stage all those, and I can say created 2 new Java files. Okay, the reason why I'm saying doing something meaningful, if it's too generic, it's going to be hard for you to find where you need to revert back to. So maybe I should say created Constructor Overloading and time of day. All right, those are pretty specific. I've committed that change. Now I can see that my local is one commit ahead of my origin on my remote. The master branch in my origin on my remote. My remote is still one behind. Okay, I can continue working though, so let's go back to IntelliJ. So the more commits I do, the easier it is if I need to reset to basically a previous snapshot. So time of day, and this is where we have not really discussed how we need to name our variables. So we've talked about scoping and having stuff be private instance variables so that we can control access. Okay, now private, we know in time of day we're going to have hours and minutes. So I could say hour and private minutes. Okay, Well, and those would be ints, won't they? Int and int. Okay. What we haven't talked about, though, is recognizing a variable based off how we write it. Instance variables, class variables, and parameters that you use for methods are all basic variables. So there needs to be kind of a standardization of how you are naming your variables. A lot of times you're going to see instance variables, which are also known as member variables, usually have M attached to it like this, or with an underscore. Okay, I think that this is the easier way. I use camel humping, so I do M hour, and then I'm going to do M minutes, because those are member variables. A class variable, so something that I would have as static, int, let's say number of days. I want to recognize that from anywhere in my code that that is a class variable. I would probably change this, so instead of it saying just a plain variable, because it could get confusing, doing C for class, so C number of days, that lets me know that that is a class variable, not an instance variable. Okay, and then if I have a parameter, so you have something inside your method, then instead of it being C or M, you will want to use P for parameter. Okay, that's an easy way that you can recognize your variables in your code. Okay, so if we're looking at time of day, we have hours and we have minutes. Now, what I want to show you is that constructors automatically get created and our numbers automatically get put. So let's just do some getters. So I'm going to hit Alt Insert, or I can go into my code and click Generate, and I'm going to do getters, and I want to do getters for both of them. Okay, so now I have two getters, I have two variables. If I go to Constructor Overloading, and here I say, so I'm going to create time of day, let's call it now, is equal to new time of day. And now if I print system.out.println, and I print the current time of day is, let's click enter. Okay, so if I want to do that, let me click. That's annoying. Current time of day is, and then I am adding, let's say now, because I'm using the instance, now dot get hour, and then put the semicolon in there, and now dot get minutes. If I print this and run this, we're going to find something interesting. So when you do choose run, because we added our main in there, we need to say where main is. Okay, so let's run this. And what you're going to see is that the time of day, that my hours and my minutes still are getting initialized. I never initialized them. Okay, and the constructor is a default constructor that you don't see, but it's there. What happens is that all my variables are going to get initialized to zeros and null values. Okay, now if I go back to my time of day and I actually build a constructor in, so I'll insert again, we want to do a constructor. If I do a default constructor, this is what it looks like, okay? And if I still run it again, it's still going to give me 0, 0 for my values. Okay. Now, if I actually change this to where I'm giving, let's say, the int, and instead of m hour, I'm going to say p hour, and int p minutes, because those are parameter variables, and I'm assigning them, so I say this dot m hour is equal to p hour, and this dot m minutes, m minutes is equal to p minutes. Okay, now if I do this, and here in my in my constructor overloading, I'm still just calling this default one. Once I override and give something other than a default one an empty constructor, when I run it, I will get an error. Okay, that's because that constructor no longer exists anymore. It only exists if I have not overrode it with another constructor. Okay, so let's actually go in here though, because what I want to point out is that I can have multiple constructors and they can do different things. So Alt, insert constructor, and I want to do one that is empty. Then I want to do one that is Alt, insert constructor, that is just taking the hours. Okay, so I could do something like this. I could say time of day. Well, if they don't give anything, then I'm saying this dot m hour is equal to, and give it some default value. And I could keep doing this for all of them. The problem is that, for one, we're being really redundant. And I don't like being redundant, and you should in your code try to make it so you're not having to retype stuff a bunch of times. So instead of actually typing this, we can start where we're working towards the most complex constructor that we have. The this word could be used in terms of the constructor. I can say this and put in parentheses and call all of my stuff. I could call this constructor, and this constructor could call this constructor, or I could use this constructor to call this one. So I could say this, and then say 0 and 0, and that's going to this p hour and this p minutes. And it only works as long as it's the first line of in any constructor. I can call a more complex constructor and I'm spending less time. This one, I could go this, and then I could give my m hour, which is not correct. That's supposed to be p hour. So let's make that change, p hour. And then I can give it a default value for the minutes if I don't have it. Okay, and then if they give the hours and the minutes, then I'm taking those, and that's what it becomes. Okay, so now I have a constructor that is dealing with all cases of inputs, and I'm still giving a value that I want to give. Okay, so here, if I leave it, it's still going to go to 0, 0, but if I give something and I say 5, it's going to go 5, 0. Or if I give it, the hour and the minutes, then, now we got 5, 10. Okay. So what we can do with this, though, is we can create and get it to print out the variables that we want. And this works. There's a problem, though, and it's not a coding problem, it's a logic problem that we have to start planning for. And this is where we got to start validating our inputs. If I let's say I change this, now I'm going to go ahead and add a scanner class into it. So I want to take a user input equals new scanner system.in. All right, so I have a new scanner, and instead of putting those inputs in, I am going to say system.out.println, please enter the desired time separated by a space. Time in hours and minutes. Okay. The issue that we have is if I take this and I say keyboard.nextInt and keyboard.nextInt, and I run this, I will have situations that cannot exist, but it's still creating it. I need to find a way to make it so it is prohibiting me from giving bad information. So if I say it's we're on the 25th hour and 88 minutes, that is still giving me it out, but this is incorrect. That is an impossible amount of hours that I could give and an impossible amount of minutes that I can give, but it's still creating it. So if we're talking time of day, we have to actually plan around how to make sure that when we are creating this object, that the inputs that we give or that we get from other programs, from users, however we get those inputs, that they are still within our parameters. And this is where validation comes in. Because when I am creating this, I need to deal with the situation that the user could be giving information incorrectly, and I need to make sure and check for that. Ways that we've been doing it up to now is where we've just been handling it beforehand. So when they're trying to enter it in, we're doing, a bunch of if statements and different, inequality values, and say, hey, if they're within this or this, then, we can allow them to go ahead and enter it. What we need to change, though, is we need to have the class itself deal with its own issues. So inside of time of day, what I want you to work on is to try to figure a way to make it so that when they are entering the hours and the minutes, that it is only valid time. This is how you're going to start doing validity checks. Okay, so there's a number of ways that you could do it. You could do it directly inside of the constructor. You could do it with a method. You could just write a bunch of if-then statements. There is ways that are better. But what I want you to try to do is to make sure that the user cannot have an instance variable created for time of day that has hours outside of 0 all the way to 23, and does not have minutes outside of 0 all the way to 59. Okay, so go ahead and start trying to play around with this so that we can have our instance variable of time of day, when it gets created, it only has valid time. All right, good luck. When you get done, make sure that you are going to get cracking and you are looking at your work in progress. You're staging the necessary files that need to be staged. So here we have made changes to those files. These are out. That's just how it's doing it with JVM. We could go ahead and stage them. Created some constructor overloading. Commit those changes. So now we've committed twice. Our master from our remote is actually 2 commits off. Again, we can go ahead and push. And now they're in sync. They're on the same commit. I can go back to my class. I can refresh this. And now it has it. So even in here, if I was looking at this right now, I can go to edit in GitHub and I could print out another line. This is a new line. Okay. I could do that. I could commit added an additional line. I could commit this change. It's just going to automatically write it to that branch. But now when I go into Get Kraken, there is a way that you can fetch to see where it's at so that we can see, hey, look, it's actually ahead of us before you do a pull, because if they're in line, then you have the newest. But so since I see that my remote is 1 commit ahead of my local, I can go ahead and pull, which is now putting them back in sync. And if I go back to my IntelliJ project and I go back to the constructor overloading, now it's got that new additional code in there. Okay, so this is how you sync it back and forth.